The Mariners celebrating 40 years as a franchise. 1977 marks their first year as a franchise. And hey, we're sitting here 40 years later. The M's are still in Seattle. They're still playing ball out here. And today we're discussing the good, the bad, and I'm avoiding the ugly because I don't want you to have to throw your device away. The one that you're listening to this show on. Needless to say, baby, it's the Baseball Fury, and I'm Jimmy Flame. We'll be right back. And real quick, some quick house cleaning before we move on to the Mariners and 40 years of baseball in the Pacific Northwest. Head on over to Facebook. Holler at me over there. Jimmy Flame 77. Look for the guy with the blonde hair and wearing the pink, baby. And also on Twitter at Jimmy Flame 77. I'm on Twitter all the time, tweeting some funny stuff. It's either baseball related, wrestling related, or just my funny sense of humor. My odd sense of humor, as some people say. Over there at Twitter, Jimmy Flame 77. Both across the board. That's my handle on both Facebook and Twitter. You can also, if you're so inclined to look at photos, you can catch me on Instagram as well at Flame Jimmy. It's backwards, one word, all lowercase. Flame Jimmy. And now, on to the Mariners. Now, some of you might ask why I haven't discussed the Mariners very much on this show, given that I currently live in Seattle. I get around, by the way, but currently live in Seattle. I go to a lot of Mariners games. I'm just a huge fan of baseball as it is. So, although my team is the Baltimore Orioles, always will be, I bleed black and orange. And I don't think the Oriole bird looks funny. So y'all just keep that to yourselves. But I do live in a major league city, and I go to a lot of major league games because I love baseball. So being here as long as I have, and being a baseball fan, excuse me, I can't help but follow the Mariners and even root for them so long as they're not playing my O's. And I have in the past. I even have a Mariners hat. Don't tell anyone, but I even got a Mariners hat that I wear from time to time. But I don't discuss them on the show very much. Well, partially is because I'd have to just deliver bad news almost all the time if I did. Now today is no different. But, on the other hand, I'm also going to deliver some good news. Some of the great moments in Mariners histories over the last 40 years will be discussed as well. But I'm going to start with the bad, because I know how y'all love to hear the bad. And we're talking trades, because every baseball fan knows, especially Mariners fans, and I empathize with you, believe that. I've been here, long enough to experience a lot of these things that I'm about to discuss. But anyone who does not live under a rock and follows baseball in the least bit knows that the Mariners probably have the worst luck in trade history in the entire history of the game. The worst luck in trade history in Major League Baseball. Now, while some teams have just been bad, period, I'm talking like, traditionally, Pittsburgh Pirates, even though they've won a ton of World Series, they've been pretty bad. Although they've turned it around, they're a much better team over the last couple of years. But historically, they've sort of fallen short. Houston Astros comes to mind, too. The old Montreal Expos, now back to the Astros, they've turned it around as well. But the Montreal Expos, who aren't even in existence anymore, comes to mind. I wonder how those fans up in Montreal feel about the current state of the Washington Nationals. Probably none, but can't help but wonder as well. Some other historically bad teams. The Padres, they've done well, of course, but, they're not at the top of the list when you're thinking of a team like the Yankees. Oh, sorry. Almost vomited just saying that. Or the Boston Red Sox, who are a respectable good team. Even Tampa, who were known for a long time as the Triple Rays, as a pejorative. Um, they're they've had some good years, but they've pretty much been known as a bad team. But the difference between the Seattle Mariners and all these other traditionally bad teams is the bad teams begin the season with subpar players and they end the season with subpar players. That is not what happens with the Mariners. The Mariners always have a good roster, a solid roster. On paper, they look like they can compete with anyone in the league, and they do at times. But they are prone to slumps and really bad ones. I'm talking like 16-game losing streaks, things like that. Some really horrifying things that just make them so hard to watch. But you gotta love the team. Now, it's not that the organization doesn't make an effort to win games, though some would speculate, and I use that term in quotations and in bold and underlined, but some would speculate that the team is more into making money than they are into fielding a team to actually win the dance or get to the playoffs. Now, it's all conjecture. No matter what I say after that would be conjecture, so I'm going to avoid it for now, though you always know that I backtrack from time to time, and I might come back to this and discuss it a little further. But, the most of these other teams, they turn things around. They farm their players well. They bring them up. They teach them how to play pro ball at the major league level, and they really groom them to win. Anyway, you can argue that no team in the modern era of baseball has ever traded away more talent and future stars than Seattle. It seems like every year when I'm watching the World Series, the playoffs, or watching the teams in contention, I always catch an at-bat or a highlight reel type play on ESPN or whatever channel I'm watching baseball on, or on my MLB TV app, which I encourage all baseball fans to get. It's just wonderful. But it seems like every time I tune in, I see a former Mariner doing something spectacular on a spectacular team, on a stellar team. What's the deal with that? I don't know. We're going to discuss it just a little bit here. So, since the club's inception in 1977, misguided scouting, a desire for quick results, or a lack of vision, to the future, or simply an unwillingness to pay stars the money that is required these days. The Mariners have let enough players to get away to fill two all-star teams, the entire roster, probably more. And I'm being nice there. But granted, some of the moves were due to unhappiness on the part of players. Players become unhappy and they demand trades, and there's not enough money in the world they can use to keep them. That does happen. So that's not what I'm talking about. The answer to the Mariners' woes, in my opinion, is not necessarily a lack of money, but it's a lack of spreading the money intelligently. Instead of throwing a single player a ton of money, why not get a bunch of solid players for the same amount of money? I don't know. That's why I'm not a GM, and I'm an armchair GM, as they say. I have worked in baseball before, though, so I do have a little bit of clout here. But anyhow, players get mad when they're not winning. I can't really think of anyone off the top of my head that plays the game simply for the money. Even if they're playing for the money, they want to win. They want to be happy. It just makes cashing your paycheck all that more exciting when you're on a winning ball club. The Mariners have been accused of having a lack of commitment by the entire organization to make winning happen. Now, I don't know how true that one is, because the Mariners have had some great seasons and they have won in the past. They have fielded some winning teams, especially on paper. So I'm going to go through some really, really notable players that have come through the Mariners organization that the Mariners signed away either as free agents or busted trades over the course of 40 years. Now, many of these players are more or less happened in the last 20 years. Because the first 20 years, I don't even know if anyone knew what the Mariners were doing. I don't even think the Seattle Mariners knew what they were doing. But however, inspired by Ichiro, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to top him off on this list, get to him right away. But here are what I'll call the worst trades and giveaways that the Mariners have ever made. This is in no particular order over the last few decades. And I'm going to start with Ichiro Suzuki to the Yankees. Now, just real quick, Ichiro wanted to win badly. The Mariners offered him money. He initially took it, played out that contract, and when it came down to, okay, should the Mariners re-sign this guy to a multi-year deal, or I believe in his final year, try to get something in return for him. Anyhow, they shipped him off to the Yankees. Ichiro figured the Yankees were a winning ball club. That was his best chance at the time to winning it all, winning a World Series, and it sort of backfired. He is now with the Miami Marlins, and he's actually doing pretty good down there. Fun guy to watch. When I was working down there in New Orleans for the AAA club they have down there, or interning rather, we got to see a lot of up-and-coming Mariners, Marlins, right? Anyhow, we got to see a lot of Marlins come through, and Ichiro even came down for a game once to help sell tickets, but I wasn't at that one. But nevertheless, he's with the Marlins now, but he went originally to the Yankees from the Mariners, and he's still doing pretty good. One can only wonder today what his bat might do in this lineup. Next up, Derek Lowe and Jason Varitek both went to Boston. Well, we all know the kind of careers they've had since. Another Boston legend, David Ortiz. A lot of people, I think, overlooked that the Mariners originally had David Ortiz, Big Papi, and they dumped him off on the Twins. Maybe they foresaw the kind of money it was going to take and just didn't want to spend it. Who knows? It's all conjecture. David Ortiz came here, and you can only wonder again, like what kind of career he might have had with the M's had the M's made an effort to keep him, or if David Ortiz made a better effort to be here. Jamie Moyer and Raul Ibanez to Philly. Raul had a few stints with the Mariners, and he always did well here. He was solid, came through. Some of the longest balls I see that I ever saw hit out of Safeco Field came off the bat of Raul Ibanez, and everyone knows that Jamie Moyer is just an all-around good guy, solid pitcher, fun to watch, especially later in his career. And him going to Philly and having to bat and run the bases was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. There was a game in which he was running home, and he arguably committed, or performed rather, the worst slide in baseball history. I mean, his whole body looked like a stiff stick just falling straight to the ground, and it was one of the funniest things I ever saw. But nevertheless, Jamie Moyer made an impact here with the Mariners. He was dished off to Philadelphia with Raul Ibanez, and I believe he still runs a not-for-profit charity here in Seattle. And of course, who can forget Ken Griffey Jr. to Cincinnati? Now, the M's did dish out money for this guy. They brought him in '89. His first swing, the first major league ball he ever saw at the Kingdome, was just a majestic home run. Made his mark here in Seattle. He hit over 600 in his whole 600 home runs. In his whole career between Cincy and the Mariners, hitting 400 with the Mariners, 200 with Cincy. I believe he's the only player to ever achieve that feat between two teams, 400 home runs with one and 200 with another. You can't say enough about the guy. He's still connected to the city. He's always going to be a Mariner. No matter how long he played for the Cincinnati Reds, he's always going to be a Seattle Mariner. The kid is a Seattleite, although he went to Cincinnati because his roots were in that area and he just wanted to play at home. I mean, I don't think the Mariners could have come up with enough money to keep him here, although he did come back to the team more in a symbolic, under a symbolic umbrella than in an effective one, though his bat was still pretty good when he came back, and in his second year, he just couldn't turn on the fastball and eventually retired mid-season. But nevertheless, giving up Ken Griffey Jr., all those years he spent in Cincinnati, though prone to injury, one can only wonder what his bat would have done in the M's lineup during that time. Another Boston Red Sox, or eventual Boston Red Sox, Dave Henderson. Yeah, Dave Henderson came through the M's organization, and the M's dished him off too. Carlos Guillen, we can name a few more. Mike Hamlin. Guillen went to Detroit. Hamlin went to Houston. A-Rod. I've spent a lot of time on this radio show talking about Alex Rodriguez. The Yankee, haven't really talked about him as the Ranger or the Mariner, though he should be discussed as a Mariner. I mean, he was Rookie of the Year, won all kinds of awards, just exploded onto the MLB scene, and just proved right away that he could play at this level and was just a fantastic player. However, the M's got rid of another one. A-Rod went on to do all of his greatness with Texas and the Yankees. Rafael Soriano. He went to the Braves. Adam Jones. Now, this one I can thank the M's for because he's been fantastic for the Baltimore Orioles. He's been nothing but just awesome in the field. His bat, he's been great to the city of Baltimore as well. And if you didn't know he was from the San Diego area, you'd think this guy was from Baltimore. By the way he walks, the way he talks, he's really embraced that city. Nevertheless, he came through the M's organization. And just like most of these other guys, it's a wonder. I mean, had the Mariners made an effort to keep him, one can only wonder what his bat would be doing right now for the M's. I mean, geez, talk about a player. Tino Martinez to the Yankees. Of course, Randy Johnson, the big unit, to Arizona. Though that, at the time, seemed like a pretty good deal, given that, many of the beat writers and they felt Randy Johnson was hitting the twilight of his career. But, he goes to Arizona and wins the freaking World Series. Not just as an effective pitcher, but a dominant one. And he remained dominant for years thereafter. Randy Johnson to me he's like Ken Griffey Jr. He's always going to be a Mariner no matter how you spin it. Adrian Beltre came through. That was one of those pickups, where the M's seemingly wanted to shut down some of the naysayers and just get a star player. Well, they ended up giving him to Texas. Doug Fister, great pitcher, great dominant pitcher. Off to Detroit. He goes to Detroit and he just continued to do in Detroit what he did here, which was put up just rock solid numbers. I mean, he was always in contention to win games. However, the bats didn't back him up and he didn't do a whole lot because of that. But all of his other stats, clearly among the best in the league. And of course, R.A. Dickey to the Mets. He's done some pretty good things there, though his arms sort of slowed down in the last year or so. His knuckleball is just not hitting it. But that's what you get with a knuckleballer. You're either going to have a really dominant pitcher or one that throws a lot of meatballs to these professional batters. Now, those are the most obvious ones that I can think of for now. And given this is the Mariners' 40th year in existence, I felt it was appropriate to kind of go through some of these things because the Mariners are known as an organization to sort of blow it when it comes to trades. They're catching players, at seemingly good times in their career, but just things happen that were not foreseen. Cliff Lee comes to mind, or Eric Bedard, especially the Bedard with the Bedard trade that sent Adam Jones over to Baltimore. Bedard was a solid pitcher. He came here and just missed so many games. I think he missed 30 games in his first 2 seasons and was eventually just let go by the wayside. But I highly recommend all Mariners fans pick up the book Shipwrecked, A People's History of the Seattle Mariners. If you're diehard, it will make the blood shoot right out of your freaking eyes. We're talking moments now. We're talking about great moments. Now, with the bad comes the good, and the Mariners have had a lot of good moments. They've had some fantastic moments, as a matter of fact. And I got 2 words for you. Soto Mojo. That's right, Daddy. Soto Mojo. I remember I was living here when that catchphrase was adopted. But, it's no secret that baseball has always been my favorite sport to watch. And many people find baseball boring, but they can just go to hell as far as I'm concerned. You guys can just piss off, quickly. But I find the game absolutely enthralling. The beginning of the baseball season is like the first taste of summer. Months of sitting out in the sun, listening to the crack of a bat, all that good stuff. Eating bad hot dogs, drinking expensive beer. All that good stuff. Just going to the game, just being a part of the atmosphere. And to me, there are a few moments better than digging into some garlic fries and watching some Mariners baseball. I'm just going to get right to it. Right off the top, the number one moment was Edgar Martinez's double in the 1995 ALDS. It's Game 5. Edgar Martinez game-winning 2-run double. That was just electric. It still gives me goosebumps thinking about it. As Ken Griffey Jr. came running around third, slid into home, and the team just piled on him, and just the big smile on his face as his batting helmet fell off his head, and just the joy of the players. And it was just one of those electric moments. Arguably saved baseball in Seattle. There were talks at the time of the Mariners moving somewhere, and that game alone just brought an electricity back to the Pacific Northwest and to baseball in Seattle that has just not been recreated ever since. Some things have come close, such as King Felix's perfect game on August 15th, 2012. The King pitched the first perfect game in Mariners history, and just the 23rd in baseball history. That's August 15th, 2012. He's gone on to just be a phenomenal pitcher. And when you go to the stadium on Felix Hernandez Day, they have the King's Court set up in left field, or off to the side of left field, where all these fanatics, are wearing their King Felix shirts and these crowns, and they chant K as Felix pitches the game. Again, another electric moment in Seattle Mariners history. Felix Hernandez, perfect game. The first one in Mariners history, August 15th, 2012. And who can forget Mike Cameron's 4 home runs in a single game back in 2002? May the 2nd, to be exact. Mike Cameron, who was a center fielder, committed this feat against the Chicago White Sox. Only 16 players in the entire history of Major League Baseball have accomplished this. That's 16 players in a lot of years. Mike Cameron, making baseball great in Seattle. And who can forget Ken Griffey Jr.'s streak of 8 home runs in 8 consecutive games? July 20, 1933. That is too much. Babe Ruth numbers, ladies and gentlemen. July 20th, 1930. Why am I doing that? July 20th, 1993. Ken Griffey Jr. started his streak against the Yankees and ended it 8 days later. Now, Randy Johnson, the big unit, while King Felix threw a perfect game, the first in Mariners history back in 2012, Randy Johnson threw the first no-hitter in Mariner history back in 1990 against the Detroit Tigers, June the 2nd. And Gaylord Perry, who could forget? Gaylord Perry was teetering on his 300th victory when the Seattle Mariners called him up way back in 1982. Now, part of it was a gimmick by the organization to draw fans to the stadium. They were only averaging 14,000 a game at that point, which was just dismal compared to other teams because baseball was kind of booming, and it wasn't booming in Seattle. In fact, many people thought baseball was going to completely fail in the Pacific Northwest, period. Well, Gaylord Perry on May 6, 1982, came on in and became the 15th pitcher in the history of baseball, Major League Baseball, to claim his 300th career win with a 7-3 victory. And the gimmick worked because attendance remained up, way up from 14,000 from May 6, 1982 on for the rest of that season. And who can forget? I wasn't even thinking about living in Seattle at the time, or I barely even knew Seattle was a city at the time, when Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. hit back-to-back home runs in a game. This happening on September the 14th, 1990. The fans witnessed the Griffey father-son duo hit back-to-back home runs against the California Angels, the then-known California Angels, the first and still the only time this feat was accomplished. Ichiro, not going to say his last name because it's not even on his uniform. I'm just kidding. Ichiro Suzuki on October 1st, 2004, broke George Sisler's seemingly unbeatable, unattainable 84-year-old record for most hits in a season. He finished in 2004 with 262. Phenomenal. And Ken Griffey Jr., after a stint playing for the Cincinnati Reds, Ken Griffey Jr. finally returned to the Mariners on April the 14th, 2009. Seattle Mariners lineup for the first time in a while in a grip, featuring the franchise kid, April 14th, 2009. The next day, April 15th, he hit his 400th home run as a Mariner and his 613th career homer. And ladies and gentlemen, you got to say, baseball is here to stay in Seattle through its ups and downs. And just a bit of looking back, a little bit of nostalgia, history here. In 1969, Seattle got their first major league team, originally called the Pilots. And Seattle had also been a major hub for the Pacific Coast League. But in 69, Seattle got their first team, the Pilots. But, I mean, it was dismal. It was bad. It was just a sinuous operation. And only after a year, they were gone. Long gone, baby. And it wasn't until 1977, 40 years ago, that baseball returned. They lost their inaugural game. And despite that, it looked like baseball was just here to stay anyway. Now, you gotta love an underdog, and Seattle has pretty much played that part in its 40-year career, in their 40-year existence. And as an American, as a baseball fan, I love the underdogs. I loved the Expos back when they were playing. I loved it when they had those few really good seasons. I was even pulling for them to win. You know, especially the wacky design of their uniform. Well, the Mariners were kind of like they were in that echelon with me growing up. They were sort of an exotic team. I didn't get to watch them very much. And when they did, I always called them the Mariners. Whenever they played the Orioles, the Mariners. And they had this kind of like this funny color scheme, and the uniforms looked kind of off. But they were just a fun team to watch. They've always been a fun team to watch. They've always sort of been ragtag, despite their underlying professionalism. They've always had that sort of Oakland A's aura to them, and that, you know, these are ball clubs consisting of players, who would wear their hair long or wear mustaches and beards or, have kind of, funny batting stances or whatever. But despite the ups and downs, baseball is here to stay in Seattle. And here's to another 40 years. Win or lose, you're going to find me in the stands whenever I'm out here in the Pacific Northwest. You're going to find me out there, cheering for the Mariners whenever the O's aren't in town. So I got to apologize ahead of time, but I'm wearing the orange and black whenever they come to town, baby, because that's how I roll. You got to support your number one. But the Mariners always very, very close number two in my heart, and here's to them having another 40 years of successful baseball and to a successful season, and let's hope they don't make any funny trades in the meantime. Let's just hope for the best, because this team deserves it. They've been around for 40 years, and my God, come on, let's get a World Series out here. At least a World Series appearance. They've gotten close. They've gotten close, real close, and they just can't seem to punch the ticket. You know what I mean? Like the 116 win season always comes to mind. It should come to your mind as well. And the fatalism that just clouds this team is remarkable. And I really believe in the power of Zen to a point. And let's remain positive. Let's turn a positive tune on this season. And maybe that'll trickle in, from the outside in. Who knows? But the Mariners are here to stay. Here's to another 40 years of baseball. And in closing, I just want to give just a little bit here in the sort of year by year results category. Of course, there's the 116 win season back in 2001. Rather, I think I said 2002 earlier. They followed it with some amazing seasons. 2002, 2003, both winning 93 games. And they haven't hit the 90 win mark since. They've gotten close with 86 back in 2016 last year. They even got close to the playoffs. Back in 14 with 87 wins. 85 back in 09. This year, they're not doing too good. I mean, someone needs to remind the coaching staff that they have a bench. They should really learn to use it. Nevertheless, let's go, baby. Come on, Mariners. Let's turn this season up. And, I don't know what else to say other than let's reflect back on the good. Forget about the bad. Avoid the bad trades. Avoid getting rid of good players. Just pay the frickin' money. The fans come out in droves, even when you're bad. Now, give them something in return. Let's get a good team out there, and one that's not just good on paper, though they are real good on paper. Even this year's team is really good on paper. I mean, when I first read the 25-man roster before the season started, I figured that they're going to at least contend for a wild card. At least, because they haven't had a chance to gel yet. But, nevertheless, let's go Mariners. Let's do it. And that's going to conclude this Baseball Fury, ladies and gentlemen. You can tune into the Baseball Fury. This is Jimmy Flame bringing you another episode at another time, another topic, more good times, baby. Stay tuned all week, as I said before. I'm going to be doing a bunch of shows this week featuring various baseball teams. Today was all about the Mariners. 40 years. 40 years the Mariners have been a major league team, and they've made some funny trades. They've gotten rid of some great players, but they've also had some good too. So we went over both, and here's to a great season, Until next time, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jimmy Flame signing off. This has been the Baseball Fury. Facebook, catch me, Jimmy Flame 77, and on Twitter at Jimmy Flame 77. I'll see you guys over on social media. Until next time, I'm out.